Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Fabric UK user group. I'm your host, Leon Gordon, and I'm here with my co-host, Pragati Jain.
Hi, Leon, and hi, everyone. Hopefully, those who are in UK are coping up with heat in a good way because it's extremely hot today. Yeah.
Yes,
How about you, Leon? How are you
yeah,
coping up with the heat?
I totally agree. I absolutely love the heat, and I was going to say summer is finally here, and looking forward to hopefully going on. Well, I know I'm going on vacation soon, so hopefully a little bit more of that heat. But Pragati, talking about if I can talk about it like vacation, it's time for us to announce to the community that you'll be taking a little hiatus shortly for maternity leave. So an absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I really don't know how many people in the community know about it, but yeah, I'm going to start a new journey soon. I think going to take up a new role, I guess. So yeah, I'll take a little break with the user group probably from after 2 weeks or so. But you'll still have Leon. Leon will bring amazing content to the user group. You might see me sometimes. I mean, I might be delivering basically babies soon in next few days. So if I feel like I need a change, you might see me on the user group. But yeah, I'm just taking a break for some time because I think this new role is going to be a challenging one for me, and I might have to just put aside everything and then prioritize the baby. So yeah, so I'll be away for some time. So don't miss me. Leon will take care of everything. So yeah, you'll still see our user group bringing the lot of amazing content for you. So yeah, stay tuned for updates.
Absolutely. And on behalf of myself, Pragati, and of course the whole Microsoft Fabric UK user group, we wish you a great start to maternity leave. And obviously, congratulations there. We're going to miss you, but obviously, we know you'll be back with us very, very, very soon. So,
Of course. Of course.
with,
When the baby is asleep and I feel like, oh, I need to go and join the user group, I'll just come and see you all. So don't worry. You're not going to get away with me so soon, Leon.
well, we'll be looking forward to it. So please do. And then in terms of today's session, so this will be the first. Can I call it the first one of summer? Can we officially say that it's
Yeah,
summer
I
now?
think so. Yeah, I think so. We should. Yeah.
Okay, the first one of summer. So it's going to be an absolutely amazing session, as we have the cost of a workaround, Power BI, with NJ Park. Now, NJ needs no introduction, so he is a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, but I'm not going to give any further introduction than that because I want NJ to go through all of the fantastic work that he does in the community for you all. So with no further ado, let me add NJ. NJ, hi, thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Leon. Hi, Bharati. Congratulations again. It's so nice to hear, it's like this kind of
Thanks,
news.
Ajay.
Thanks for having me, guys. Today we're going to be talking about, Power BI and workarounds, and I'm really excited to be sharing with this for you guys today because it's the first time I'm presenting this session, but it's also something that I'm really happy to speak about just because I feel like as Power BI developers, a lot of the stuff that we do is doing this thing called MacGyvering, which is just, making workarounds work for our use case, and sometimes everything feels like a workaround. So I'm going to be talking about that today.
What an amazing subject as well. I think every Power BI developer or system developer knows that there are many workarounds or many ways
Exactly.
to solve a solution in Power BI. So NJ, really looking forward to this session. I'm going to let you
So yeah.
dive straight in if that's okay.
Awesome. Let's do it. Okay, fantastic. Okay. I think I can see myself, so I'm just going to go ahead and start. So, the cost of a workaround, key considerations for Power BI. So, first of all, thanks everyone for joining me. And this is the, it's like actual title page. A little bit about me. My name is NJ Park. I am in my second year as a Microsoft MVP, and mostly what I do is I share Power BI content on LinkedIn and YouTube, and hopefully it's helped a couple of people do a little bit better in their Power BI work. What we're going to talk about today is going to be in 4 different stages. First, we're going to try to actually answer the question, what is a workaround? Then we'll do a couple of demonstrations, and some of them will be live. Some of them will be through, it's like just presentation slides, and we'll talk a little bit about custom visuals. Then we'll talk about page level security, 2 different ways to try to achieve this. And then we'll talk about a little fun workaround trying to use Power Query code directly from GitHub. We'll finish off by trying to assess, to talk about how to assess if a workaround should be used or not, and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. But be warned, this presentation was actually made originally for 45 minutes. I do have 48 slides, but we have the hour. So if you have any questions, then Pragati or Leon will interrupt me in the middle, and that's completely okay. So feel free to ask any questions. But before answering the question, what is a workaround? I think it's actually easier if we frame the question as, why do we need a workaround? And in most cases, I think the need for a workaround is driven by one of these 4 reasons, where you have a desired functionality that doesn't actually exist in the native Power BI features. I think the classic one here is custom visuals. That's why we're going to demo that in a moment. And sometimes we have to use workarounds, like calculated columns, for example, is not really a workaround, but it's like some people are very vocal that it's not best practice. But sometimes we need to, it's like deliver that report very quickly, especially when it comes to, it's like things that are already in production or things that are time critical. So I think critical delivery is a really big reason why we would want to use a workaround. I also think that it might simply be that a workaround is sometimes just a bit more convenient. Maybe it's a bit more efficient for the specific situation. A good example that I have is I've been creating a couple of tutorials of international business communication standards and how you can achieve them with native Power BI visuals. But some of these visuals need like 20, 30 helper measures, whereas if you just used a custom visual from the app source for IBCS, you might not need to make those 20, 30 visuals. And I can really understand why it's more convenient to just use those custom visuals from app source instead. And of course, finally, we'll be talking a little bit about security requirements. Not all security requirements are very straightforward in Power BI. And page level security is one thing that isn't there natively. And if it's not there, then we got to try to find some places, some way to pull it off. And I'm going to be trying to show you a couple of examples with these, it's like things in mind about what is a workaround. But yeah, so that doesn't really answer the question, what's a workaround? What is a workaround is a question that's a little bit harder to answer because it does, like I said a little bit earlier, feel like everything is a little bit like a workaround. So maybe if we try to define it, is it everything that's not in general availability? That doesn't actually work because, for example, all of the preview features that you see, some of them have been around for a long time. The metrics visual has been around since, I think, January 2022. And field parameters, for example, I would consider field parameters to be best practice for a lot of situations, but field parameters are technically in preview and they've been around since 2023 and are still not generally available. They're still technically in preview. So if it's not everything in, it's like general availability, is it everything not inside Power BI? And that's not a good enough definition either because, external tools such as, DAX Studio, Measure Killer, there's a lot of, I would say DAX Studio, Tabular Editor, Measure Killer, and Bravo are the 4 ones that I use most often. They're not inside Power BI, but I would say using them is part of development best practice. So is everything that's, a workaround just stuff that's not best practice? That doesn't really work either because best practice is, well, I would say best practices are things that work in most situations, maybe 99% of situations, but there'll always be use cases where best practices are not the best way to resolve something. So in that case, is everything a workaround? Well, it really depends. And I think what it depends on is the result of a workaround. So, well, yeah, can we consider everything 7+ months in, PP as GA? I don't know about that. People are still working on these things. That's why they're still in preview. But I'd like to think of workarounds by their results and results for the developer and results for the actual, it's like people themselves. What's the result of a workaround? In most cases, I find that workarounds will have some form of technical debt, what needs to be, and you need to think about what needs to be refactored, if anything does. What's the costs of refactoring? For example, if you are taking on technical debt for, whatever reason, is there going to be a slowdown in development further down the line? Is there going to be downtime in production? Are those things that, things that are acceptable in, for the workaround? Like, for example, if you're using workarounds and proof of concepts, have at it. But if you're putting a workaround in production, are you really understanding what that could cause? Like the problems that could cause down the line. If we consider maintenance challenges as also potential, it's like results of a workaround, I think a really good example of this is for, when you have custom visuals that are made with code like Python, Deneb, it's like, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. If you have a developer that creates something really amazing, but it's created in, it's like with a workaround that is not so well documented, that doesn't have such great amount of resources online, then it can be really difficult for other people who are, inheriting reports to, it's like modify them or fix them. So sometimes using workarounds can cause this kind of challenge in a, longevity of a project. And these 2 points kind of contribute to the third, it's like issue that can arise from workarounds, which is the potential breaking changes. Sometimes Power BI updates might break something. That can happen, it's like even if it's not a workaround. But if it is a workaround and it's not like in general availability, you can kind of consider that it might be more likely to break, it's like somewhere down the line. But then it's also things like Charticulator, which was a custom visual that was a really amazing tool that allowed you to do so much with, in terms of visuals. But that eventually stopped being supported in the sense that Microsoft, who was developing it, stopped making additions to it. Now, it doesn't mean that it would break immediately, but it does mean that, for example, further down the line, when people were actually going to, it's like use it, and maybe Microsoft has released new changes to Power BI data models or, new streaming structures, it would not be supported in every sense. And that could definitely break sometime in the future. I do know that right now, Charticulator does have some third-party support right now. I think someone else is not part of Microsoft is developing it. But, these kind of things do happen. And on that lovely note, let's look at some demonstrations. And we're going to start with what I'm most comfortable with, which is custom visuals. This one is not something that I'm the most comfortable with, but Python visuals are a thing, right? Not a lot of people, it's like remember Python visuals, but Python visuals are really awesome. And we can use Python visuals to do more than is possible in Power BI natively. Like in the example here, you can see for using a little bit of code, you can make, it's like charts that have a scatter plot, for example, that shows the density of the different, it's like plot points across the, it's like X and Y axis, which I think is very, very nice. But it also shows a little bit of extra information like the Pearson R coefficient and the p-value, some statistical information about the actual, it's like data set itself, which sometimes can be a little bit difficult to pull out in Power BI. Pearson R, even as, it's like soon as like 2-3 years ago, it's like when I last tried making Pearson R, took like 7 or 8 different measures inside Power BI to, it's like get, and it wasn't like amazing. But, I also think that another benefit of Python visuals is that the language is very well known and accessible. And for a lot of data analysts, it's part of their daily routine. So what's the actual workaround? Well, the Python visual is a regular native visual inside Power BI. So in order to use it in desktop, all you need to do is activate this Python visual, put it to your canvas. But then you also need to do a couple of, it's like long steps where you need to actually download Python and install the libraries on your local machine. Enable your script visuals. This is like the option to use Python visuals as well as R visuals inside, Power BI desktop. And then you can start writing some code where if you put in some field, some data columns into the field, into the data fields here. Then you can actually, it's like pull them into a data frame and start creating, it's like visuals with them, which is, it's like really nice. There are some limitations to the Python visual. For example, I believe you need to have a pro license, or, it's like Power BI Premium per user license to be able to publish these Python visuals. And I believe that if you're on a free account, you might not be able to render them. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But there are some licensing restrictions on how this the Python visuals work inside the service. But then, if it sounds so good, like, why is this a workaround? Well, there is a cost to Python visuals, and the two main downsides is that, for one, they're not interactive. You can't click on, it's like something here and then cross filter, it's like other visuals. That can be a really big downside, but it's also typically slower than other visuals. And that's because, the calculations are being done inside of Python. If you're doing it on the desktop, it's a little bit slower because it's trying to use Python inside your computer and then send that data back and forth. And I believe in the service, I think with Fabric, it's a little easier now, but it's not so straightforward. It's not all being done inside of Power BI. And you have to consider, if that's the cost, if that's the downside, can we actually pay the cost? Yes, I actually think the cost is not as, it's like expensive as what's the value the, using Python visuals brings. Like, if you have a data analyst who's a little bit new to Power BI and they do have Python visualization skills and they want to use that for something in Power BI, I think it's a very effective way of bringing, it's like some of that knowledge over into Power BI. Maintenance used to be a big deal for me, and which is why I kind of stayed away from Python visuals, because I'm not like a super Python expert or anything like that. But now with ChatGPT and things like that, then it actually works, it's like quite okay in terms of maintenance and things like that. I think Jake has a really good point. It used to only work on the service if you had a personal gateway, but this is a really, it's like important point as well. That was like a hard pass on using it, because before, if you didn't have a personal gateway, you just couldn't use it inside the service. But the other thing to consider here is that there might be better alternatives. Deneb, for example, is something that is it's like another declarative language to create visualizations. And honestly, you can make some really cool things, but also have interactivity as well as, a little bit faster speed, because everything's being calculated inside of Power BI. So should you use Python visuals? Yeah, sure, of course, why not? But if you have the time and you're just learning to use Python visuals, then maybe, you could learn something else like Deneb. Okay, so that wasn't really a demo. That was more like me going through slides. But with SVGs, let's talk about this visualization technique, which is my favorite visualization technique. And why do we need SVGs? It's basically for the same reason we need, it's like Python custom visuals, which is that there's a lot of use cases. You can do so much with SVGs and, create specialized visuals that don't exist inside Power BI. And, a couple examples here. This is from Data Goblins and Data Meerkat, which is Kurt Buehler and Stefan Nessel from, Germany and Prague. Kurt is from Germany, right? I don't remember. Okay, but these are two other MVPs who have created some really amazing things on their GitHub. And one of those things is this report you see right here, which is basically everything here is slightly non-standard in terms of different ways to represent KPIs. And it's all being done using SVGs, which I think is very cool. Here as well is a different way of using SVGs, which are basically using flags, creating pie charts, creating IBCS style bar charts, which are overlapping with each other, as well as using, it's like SharePoint style pill indicators for status. So all of these things are being done with SVGs, and big shout out to a whole bunch of people who helped me bring, it's like a lot of this stuff together. And then this is also a different way of using SVGs. Now, you might think that this is a little bit silly, but have you ever been frustrated by the fact that Power BI in the service only runs like 27 different fonts if you wanted to, you can use SVGs and just have access to, pardon me, and you can just have access to 1,400 different fonts. And it's like, this is something that you can do with SVGs, which I think is very, very cool. You can change the kind of font you want. You can change the size of the font. And this is all because these are different values that are being plugged in to SVGs and rendering inside of a visual. You can even, and this is text, right? This is text fonts, but this is, for example, an icon. This is a LinkedIn icon, right? But it's like you can change the icon to be something else as well. It's like, and I think I can also show this, which is that you can change colors of the theme live, and this is all using SVGs. So I have like the background, and we can change the hue and things like that. A little bit silly. It doesn't have the most business value, but I think it's really incredible what you can do with SVGs. So just to talk about what this is, I've been using the term SVGs, but it's not really true that I'm just talking about SVGs. So image URLs are basically the hyperlink of the images. Base64 code is the is an encoding scheme to represent binary data, so like imagery data as text, and SVGs can be basically embedded inside base64 code, which is it basically takes the place of image URLs in order to get this result. And the way that we actually get to this workaround is that, okay, there are some more detailed tutorials on my channel, but generally you want to write code for the SVG and set the data type to be an image URL, which will allow that measure or column to render inside of tables. But you can also use the image URL option that you see right here inside the new card visual, which can render single visuals. It's like one at a time, which is really cool. And before this, what you actually had to do was you needed to embed SVGs inside of HTML code and use the HTML visual in, it's like, or just use base64 code. So these are, it's like lots of different types of code, which I'm not going to go into so deeply, but most of the, it's like different people who, provide information about how to use this inside Power BI will, just tell you how it is. They don't always differentiate it. And if that's the case, what's the cost of, it's like using this kind of workaround? Well, the main cost that I see is maintenance. Like, what if you, hire a Power BI developer and they've made an amazing Power BI report? It uses a lot of, it's like SVG type visuals, and it looks awesome, looks, out of this world. If you give it to a different Power BI developer who doesn't know HTML and SVGs, then you're stuck, because even though it's a lot less, because let's be honest, HTML is a really well accepted language by ChatGPT. This is something that I've tested a lot because I'm not an HTML developer either, but I do make SVGs with ChatGPT every now and then. But if you look at this code where it's using different variables and implementing those variables inside of the HTML code, then you can actually see that even though it's really great, it can be very easy to, it's like slip up and change the visual into something else. So maintenance and, changes moving forward in the report can be an issue. Another problem is data export issues. So what I mean by that is, let's say we have this wonderful table that we saw before and you wanted to export it. Click on the export data. What you'll get is a whole bunch of unreadable code where, you've got the actual code for the images. It's not going to export, it's like all of that for you. So that means that if you wanted people to be able to, export the data, you're going to have to make another table, basically. Like, that's one of the things you got to watch out for. It also, there are some problems, like if you have this table and it's just code and you are using just regular tooltips, then sometimes it'll show you a gigantic block of text in that tooltip, and that's not maybe what you want either. Couple of different things to think about. It's not a perfect solution, but can we pay the cost? I think Absolutely. We absolutely can pay the cost. The benefits of using SVGs vastly outweighs, it's like any kind of detriment. And in a lot of cases, I feel like sometimes it's not possible to do some of these visuals a different way. I say that, but there are other, it's like different ways, like using Deneb, for example, which I'm not going to actually demo here today, but Deneb is pretty amazing in terms of what it can do. And SVGs, like Python visuals, don't have that interactivity in terms of, it's like if you were building a report using SVGs and you were using creating a line chart or something, it's not clickable. And, it's like that can also be a detriment as well. Okay, so those are some custom visuals, and it's like I'm a really big fan of custom visuals in the first place. But we're also going to talk a little bit about how workarounds can, it's like exist in terms of security. Page level security is this really awesome idea that people should only see what the pages that they should see. So, like as an example, let's say. If you're viewing as, it's like one type of role, then you should only see like, you should only have access to 2 different kinds of pages. And if you are, so if I click on this, I can go to one type of page, it's like maybe a different kind of page here. But if I'm viewing as a manager, then maybe I can see, it's like some specifically different kinds of pages that aren't available for everyone else. I've even, included some SVG, it's like line charts in here as well. And that's really, it's like great. But I'm currently showing a method that I'm not 100% on board with. But I think it's a really good way of explaining this whole idea of workarounds. So security, enable a page for some users, but not for others, depending on, it's like their role level security. And so what is the actual workaround? So if we have the actual, it's like page report here, we can see that it's got 5 different, it's like columns. And to actually get to this point, sorry, I said columns, but I mean 5 different pages. And what you need to do is first you need to create an exact replica of the page names in a, it's like table. So you've got all the page names as well as what items you want the manager or non-manager or whatever other roles you want them to see and not see. So it's pretty, it's like straightforward, it's like table, just put that in there. And then what you need to do is you need to create role level security. Role level security. Oh, that's really hard to say. And if you've created role level security, you can just put something like this where, it's like if the manager is true, then you can see, it's like what pages the manager can see. And then for the non-manager equals true. So judging by this table, the manager should see, overview KPI 1, KPI 2, non-manager should see the first 3 pages. And to bring it all together, all you need to do is create a slicer with the page name and make sure that slicer is single selected. And then the actual, and then add one button where the button has the action activated, put on the conditional formatting so that the button itself is going to navigate to, hang on, let me show you right here. Put, insert a button, make sure that the action is going to be page navigation. The destination is going to be what is currently selected. So the first page name. So in that case, if you click on this button, it'll navigate you to whichever page you're on. And that's basically the whole thing. That's bringing it all together. People who have, it's like the specific roles will see the specific pages. So this is a pretty cool workaround, and I actually saw it first time on, it's like GuiaNQ, but it doesn't work. And, it's like to their credit, they do say as much in the video that it doesn't work to be used so well because the cost of this workaround is that it's not actually secure. Inside of, it's like actual links for Power BI, it's like reports, there's usually a section here that says report section something something. If the report section here, it's like exists, then anyone, regardless of the role, can copy this link and navigate to those pages, and that is not secure. So if you're a manager and you basically just copied this, okay, not here because right now I'm in the testing mode, but if you copied this and you gave it to someone who wasn't supposed to be able to see it, they would eventually, if they use that link, they will be able to get to those pages that should be hidden. So if it's not secure, can we pay the cost? Of course not for security purposes. It can still be useful for a UI UX kind of it's like deal where data security isn't necessary. But if we wanted to use security, then we need to use a different method, multiple reports, object level security, whatever it may be, to add an additional layer of security on top of this. And that's what I'm going to just show you quickly how you would do it in the service. So basically, in Power BI apps, you have the ability to have different app audiences, and with app audiences you can basically get the exact same it's like functionality where you can have either managers see it's like the reports that they should see, KPIs and KPI2s, and non-managers should see only the items that they should see. And this is basically just being done by setting the app audiences and having two different reports where the pages that people shouldn't see don't exist on that report. Downside to this is, of course, like maintenance. You have to maintain two different reports. You can alleviate that if you are using like just connecting to a semantic model that exists inside of the Power BI service, for example, so that you only have to, modify one semantic model at a time. But even doing that can sometimes be, it's like a little bit of a pain if you want to create, field parameters, if you want to create, helper tables or something like that, you have to go back to that specific semantic model. And can we pay the cost of this? Yes, this is much more secure than the previous, it's like method. It's not too difficult to pull off. And, if you want to have page level security, use this workaround, not the previous workaround. Okay, and with that, we're going to move on to another question, like, should we even use the workaround? And I'm going to try to, it's like explain what I mean with this next demonstration, which is custom Power Query library in GitHub. And I think this is really funny because I was trying to actually, it's like create a video about how you could use Power Query code that's not stored inside Power BI, but is actually stored inside a GitHub repo, or it's like just doesn't exist inside Power BI at all. And that would be really useful if you, it's like were able to pull this off, because then you could actually just, modify code in one place and have, Power Query code in one place and have it update in all of the different places that you're using it, kind of like a data flow. But instead of using, it's like just the UI functionalities of a data flow, you could actually use, it's like a GitHub repo and run all Power Query code from, it's like the repo. And that would be, it's like really nice and an awesome way to go about doing things. So I was trying to see if it was possible to do it, and I did succeed a little bit. And I say a little bit because it's not, it's you'll see in a sec. So why do we, it's like, how do we actually activate this? There's a Power Query, function that kind of started this whole story called expression.evaluate. And I was reading the Power BI Reddit one day, and I saw that, it's like someone had posted that, I believe the exact comment was, expression.evaluate is so strong that you can run Power Query code that just is sitting in your like library in your local computer. You can even run things from SharePoint. And then combining this with web.contents function, you can run data that you pull from the web. So in order to test this, what I was actually doing was I was pulling, I created like a really, really simple, it's like a piece of Power Query code. All it does is it generates two different dates starting from the 15th of October, 2021 with a distance of 1 day. So it'll do, this should give me 2021, October 15th, October 16th. But I was like, can I actually run this code without actually having that code? And that's that code right here. And I went through a lot of different iterations to try to, it's like make this work. It does work from the, it's like library, no problem. But this is the actual code itself. And let me see if I can throw this out here. The problem with this code is that it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't. And I'll explain that in just a second. Things like this, where I'm using web.content to bring in that exact text from Power Query into my Power BI, and then it's like basically it's sending it as a binary, and then you're just using the text dot from binary, it's like function in Power Query, and then evaluating that function allows you to get this, it's like code just from the Power Query, no problem. But if I was actually going to run it without all of this extra stuff here, it would run just fine in the desktop, but it wouldn't run in the service. And the reason for that is in the Power BI desktop, there are more functions that work than in the Power BI service. And that means that in order to run expression.evaluate, you actually need to declare every single, function that you're using inside of the online code. And here, I don't think I'm using any functions, but if the function that I was using got a little bit more complicated, it would stop working. So what is the workaround? The workaround is using expression.evaluate, web.contents, and declaring every single function that exists in the Power Query service, putting that all together in order to, it's like run a little bit of code. And, it's like, so I also ran and tested this, and I have a video about this if you want to check it out, but I was just changing a couple things. It's like here, changing it from 2, it's like steps to like 15 steps. And, it's like, will it work? I guess it absolutely will. If you're using GitHub repos, they take like 5 minutes to update. So like 5 minutes later, I could refresh it and it would, to change the data set itself. Really, really fun. So what's the actual problem with this? The problem with this is that there's a catch. While this works in the Power BI desktop and sometimes works in the Power BI service, it doesn't work all of the time. And I can kind of show you here. This test mQuery, it's like version 4. This is the one that I was just showing you. And if I refresh it, you can see that it's refreshing. There's no problems. It will refresh. But if you don't follow all of the different, it's like 3 things that I pointed out, which is, like the expression.evaluate, web.contents, and declaring every single, function inside that's being used inside of this, inside of the actual Power Query function, then you'll run into this error, which is like data set includes a dynamic data source. Since dynamic data sources aren't refreshed in Power BI service, this data set will not be refreshed. This is a really big one, and it's like, and you can resolve this most of the time, but not all of the time. So what do I actually mean by this? I mean that this workaround doesn't work for my use case. I can run some code from Power Query, but as soon as I need to run some code from Power Query that needs to pull data from a secure place like SQL database or something that needs authentication, it no longer works simply because it's by design. Power BI, Microsoft doesn't want you to connect to databases without inputting actual, it's like authentication. So it's blocked. And because of that, it doesn't work for the use case that I wanted. It doesn't mean that I can actually put every single Power Query code that I have, put it in one location, and it's like just make it run from GitHub repos or maybe Azure repos, or it's like whatever that may be, because of the security bindings. So can we pay this cost and actually use it? No, the security restriction is so strong that it prevents us from putting all of our code. And the best thing that you can actually do is to run, it's like Power Query code that is functions. So if you wanted to actually do something, it's like interesting, like create different functions inside of Power Query that can be reused, you can actually do this as long as it doesn't have any kind of, it's like data connection. So here I've got, it's like something that I've declared. I've declared all of these different, functions from Power Query that are being used inside the service. And then I've got a whole bunch of different functions that I am able to call, it's like from other, basically from this piece of code, and use it in other, it's like places inside Power Query, which I think is really nice. And, it's a very cool, it's a concept. So if I wanted to, it's like pull this date list function, which exists inside that piece of code, then all I would have to do is I would just have to, it's like call that, it's like one function from here and actually pull that as well, which is very nice. But this doesn't, really fit my use case at all. So when I started out building, it's like trying to make this work, centralized place to store Power Query code, the restrictions on this workaround are severe enough that I can't actually use it for what I want to. Okay, so 40 minutes in. When using workarounds, I want you to think about these couple of questions. And, it's like, I hope that the demonstrations that I've shown here today kind of, it's like indicate why you want to ask these questions. And before you're actually using a workaround, even when you're starting to build it, you always have to keep these things in mind. Why do we need it? This question is kind of really to gauge the effort of building it versus the value that it would bring. Is the effort of using, it's like a tiny piece of Python code to, it's like bring some more contextual visualizations into Power BI worth it? Yeah, sure. Why not? Is the effort to learn a new language like, Vega or Vega Lite to use in Deneb worth using, worth it for making one custom visual? Maybe not. And maybe there are better ways like using templates from, it's like other people who've posted these things online. Then we should ask, like, what is the actual workaround? Of course, you gotta, it's like figure out what you're trying to do. What's the cost of using the workaround? Like, what's the actual drawback that you see initially of using this? Is there maintenance costs? Are you going to be able to write the documentation to, hand over to other people? Can you actually pay that cost? And, I always ask that to myself because I need, a frame to try to analyze if the method is good enough, or maybe I should try something else. And finally, the most important question, does it actually fit our use case? As with, it's like the last demonstration with the Power Query, not everything's going to work all the time. And it is good to take a second to consider it all before diving into different, workarounds. Like I spent, this was for a video, so this was my own free time, but I spent weeks trying to get the Power Query thing to work. And maybe it wasn't honestly the best use of my time. All right, so that was it. 43 minutes passed, and I've got a little bit of time for a Q&A if anyone has any questions.
Excellent session. Thank you very much to NJ. Some great, I will call them demos as well. Some really great walkthroughs there of some workarounds that I believe some people would have come across in their time developing, and others which I don't believe that many people would have at all. So excellent session there. We had a lot of commentary coming in. So we were asking people regarding some of the workarounds that they've been able to put in place. And we've also got some questions coming in as well. So let's go ahead and kick off with this question coming in from Anthony Catella. And they've mentioned it always comes down to cost versus benefit when dealing with clients. Is it essential they need a workaround? And maybe this is more commentary than a question, but maybe we can just throw this around for a couple of moments between us.
Well, what do you guys think? Like Leon Bragati, like I've been yabbering on for 40 minutes. What do you guys think about this one?
I can comment that I've seen plenty of workaround in my time developing as a Power BI dev, shall we say. And sometimes there's a place. I think that probably what we've seen over the years is Power BI has become a lot more mature. The developers within this ecosystem have become a lot more mature as well. And we see this even more so as it starts to move into what we would start to call more enterprise solutions as we go into Fabric. So I think there's potentially still a time and a place, depending on where you are in your development journey and for your organization. And I think the great observation that I've seen over the years as well is Microsoft really putting a lot of effort and focus into maybe solving or eliminating a lot of these workarounds, either in-house or, as you've mentioned during the during your session, NJ, through third parties, Tabular Editor, DAX Studio, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Prakati, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, with all the clients I've worked so far, I mean, most of them definitely it comes down to cost in the end, because like for example, see today when Microsoft Fabric is here in the industry, everyone questions why we should go for Microsoft Fabric, why we should pay more for additional features which used to come earlier in premium capacity, but now for some of them they have to pay extra, right? So in the end it comes down to cost in some way. But when it comes to workaround, like I have done some reports, I mean, honestly, where I had to come up with workarounds because customer is not ready to pay for this certain thing or certain feature. So yeah, I think it completely depends on like what you're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve in the end, and then, you know, what their budget is and how they're trying to establish everything in their, you know, existing, say, Power BI state. So yeah, that's what I have in mind.
I think you guys bring up like really, really solid points. Like when it comes down to it, I really think that when it comes to, you know, it's like dealing with clients, it really depends on if they're internal clients, like if you're part of the company, or if you're a consultant, actually. Because if you're internal and, you know, so you're going to stay with that report for a long time, then I think, you know, it's actually okay to use as many workarounds as, you know, it's like you want. I think that's okay, because probably you will own that report for its lifetime. I find that's, you know, it's like very typical. People do get promoted. People, you know, it's like, you know, it's like do get, you know, it's like shifted to other places. But if I've been working inside of, you know, it's like a specific department for, you know, it's like a couple of years, I feel like, you know, it keeps coming back to you, and that's okay. But I feel like if you're a consultant and you use a workaround that no one can resolve except for you, people don't feel like, you know, as long as you're open about it, you put in the documentation, you indicate to people how you can solve it, you know, so they could realistically solve it themselves, then it's not a big deal. But I do feel there's sometimes, you know, if you don't do those steps and make the client really aware that it is a workaround, it can be seen as bad faith, and that's like something we should always worry about.
Yeah, I think in the end it just comes down to, you know, how good approach or the best practices you're using for the development. Because yeah, in the end it comes down to the work you have done, right? I mean, you can do the dodgy work and then in the end you worry about putting in the best practices. So why not do it like from starting? But yeah, it comes with some cost as well, right? Because sometimes clients are not ready to give you that liberty or that, you know, time to do everything in a proper way. So sometimes there are cases, I mean, we all should be honest, we have done a lot of workarounds for the clients because of these kind of, you know, issues while going through the project cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. One situation about this, which I think is very important, is that not all clients have accesses, for example, to external tools, you know, and that's a really big one, right? So if you want to use something with object level security, that's not possible currently without Tabular Editor, at least Tabular Editor 2, you know, 3 if you have it. So, you know, like very, very, you know, important thing to consider the situation of the client.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And then we have a couple more questions coming in here. Pragati, would you like to fire this one?
Yeah. So this question comes from Mojo Jojo. Okay. What's the learning curve for Deneb compared to using Python within Power BI?
So I'd say this is kind of like a difficult way to, you know, it's like thing to answer, because if you've never done programming before, then Deneb and Python are both equally difficult. You know, it's like you need to understand just, you know, like how to declare things, how to, you know, it's like write things inside of, you know, it's like whatever packet of things it is. Deneb is a JSON style, you know, it's like language. So everything is, you know, it's like packaged inside of its own, you know, it's like thing. Python is, you know, it's like more like a non-deterministic programming language, but Python, I would say, is probably easier to pick up not because the language itself is easier, but simply because there's so much more stuff like Python tutorials online. Deneb is really good, and Deneb can probably do more for you. And if you are going to be a, it's like data visualization connoisseur inside Power BI, then Deneb should be one of the things you at least know how to, it's like where to find the resources to make it. But am I learning Deneb actively? No. Let's leave the answer like that.
Yeah, but definitely there are few community leaders in the community who are really doing a great job with the Deneb, like Kelly Korsko. I think we had her on our user group, and I think she gave a very good start of the Deneb session. Sometimes last year, Leon, I guess, right? We had Kerry last year.
We absolutely did. We also had Daniel Mars Fitzpatrick as well, the creator of Deneb as well, on with us some time ago now.
Yeah, so I think these two should be the ones you should follow if you're really interested in doing the Deneb stuff. They write amazing posts around Deneb if you're keen to learn.
Absolutely, and Ben Ferry as well. Need to shout out great stuff as well. Okay, moving on to the next question. So I think this goes back to workarounds again. So it depends maybe on working as an individual or as a team. So what would you advise to teams? And I think we need to probably rail this in a little bit, because Power BI report development for teams is a very open subject. So let's focus solely on some of the workarounds that NJ mentioned today.
So if we're thinking about should you use a workaround inside of a team, the problem is always how are you working together as a team? Because it's really difficult to have multiple developers work on a single report unless you have the whole pipeline of, it's like Azure repos, that are connected to your workspaces, which, it's like allow you to have the deployment pipelines, as well as using possibly the differentiators inside of either the pipeline or using ALM Toolkit in order to identify where, it's like things are changing. But it's also, you don't really have things like merge strategies and stuff like that yet. So when you're working with people, when, it's like reports, I would say best practice is to work on separate things. So, someone works on the semantic model and someone works on the front end, or maybe someone works on, it's like that part of the semantic model and they're using that for, it's like this specific page, or, it's like someone else is doing something else and you're bringing those things together eventually. That's for a specific report. And in that case, then, using a workaround like a Python visual, as long as it's inside of documentation, as long as you have documentation, then it's okay. But if you're working in a larger group of people and, it's like, for example, you're working on multiple different reports, I think it's okay to let people use, it's like different techniques and build, it's like bring creativity into their own, it's like report. I understand the need for brand guidelines. I understand the need for, it's like having a shared vision, but I am very much of the opinion that, people should be given space to create. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Pragati, anything that you'd like to add at all?
Yeah, I think like Anthony gave a very good example there, right? Like workarounds can be positive and negative, right? Like, for example, bidirectional filter in your data modeling can be a good workaround, but without understanding implications, you just go ahead with it sometimes. So yeah, this could be like something which we should be very aware of. Like, we know, like a good Power BI, a data model is a good foundation for a Power BI report, right? So these kind of workarounds should be taken care of. Like if you're doing something, you need to make sure it doesn't impact anything else going down the line. So yeah. And I think apart from this, we had more like comments, and then we had like quite active chat today in the session. Like for example, Jake was also talking about, like, you can, when you were talking about Git, he mentioned like you can use Git and Fabric APIs to split single report into two, to avoid keeping two versions. Okay, this is something I learned. I didn't know this can be done, but yeah, thanks for putting that, Jake, there. It kind of gives us that view as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not sure if we've got any more questions, but yeah, more like good comments. Like again, Anthony mentioned he has been using field parameters in production. even though they were not in GA. But then, yeah, like we tend to use some workarounds, right, when it comes to delivering.
Yeah, I kind of miss the shape map. I like I still think it has some of the best map visuals.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think Icon Map 2.0 just came out, and that's really amazing too, right?
Yes, absolutely. We had James Dales on here not too long ago, and I'm sure we'll have him back in the future now that a pro version of Icon Map is available. So congratulations to him and his team over at Tigantis.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think we have been having a few more comments coming in. And yeah, I think this was an amazing session. I didn't know we can do a lot with SVGs. I mean, unfortunately, I haven't used SVGs that much. But yeah, for me, it was like a highlighter. Oh, I can change the fonts. Okay. When someone asked me, can you make it this way? Okay, I can bring in SVGs and try to do something with it. So
Pragati, I actually started with SVGs because I wanted two things, which was bar charts with rounded edges and a gradient. So and just finding the answer to those two things took me so much time. But eventually, I got there, and I have to say I love SVGs, but it's also some people don't like it as much, and I understand that. I'm not asking everyone to use it, but it does sometimes feel a little bit like a cop out because SVGs are web developer stuff, right? So the way that we use it inside Power BI is we take the specific points of the web code and then put in our variables, and like that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I think that so we do have another question coming in from Shyam. So I think we have time probably to field this as our last one. Going forward, which tool, Fabric or Power BI, and are they separate tools? We can probably chop that up as well. But do we need to focus on for better career opportunities?
Okay, so considering we only have 3 minutes left, okay, let's break this down into like the 3 main points. Fabric and Power BI aren't so different, but if you consider it's like what is Fabric versus what is Power BI. Power BI is the visualization tool that it's like we know and love, and Fabric is an environment for Power BI to exist in. It's connected to a lot of the different functionalities that Microsoft is pushing. Does it mean that you need to focus on one or the other? I think that if you focus on Power BI naturally, as you get better in Power BI, then the natural way of progression will be into Fabric. Microsoft is pushing very much for Fabric, and that does not seem like it's going to slow down, at least in the next 5 years. So if you want to to like be pretty secure, I think Fabric is a pretty good place to to like focus on. I will say, however, that Power BI is not going away. People who specialize in Power BI are it's like going to be it's like needed. And it's also, I think Power BI right now is not the easier route. Power BI was the easier route 5 years ago when not as many people were in Power BI, but now not as many people are in Fabric. But conversely, there are less companies that use Fabric. So will you have a better career on Power BI or Fabric? I think it'll be easier to find jobs with Power BI, but I think you'll get the better paying jobs with Fabric.
Yeah, I think I agree to that point in some way. Definitely. Because anyways, I mean, Fabric is just something built around Power BI. Don't forget that. I mean, whatever this new analytical platform gives you, it comes around Power BI. Like if you look at the licensing, your all premium capacity SKUs have been replaced by Fabric SKUs, right? So you need to be aware of that thing. But yeah, definitely Power BI has been there for a long time, so better career opportunities there. But Fabric opens up new doors being a Power BI developer. Trust me, that's what I've been telling people for the last few months within my team. So Fabric gives you more opportunities. You can upskill yourself with so many amazing things that are there within Fabric. So yeah, it's up to you, like what you really want at this point. Do you really want to just, I mean, obviously, if you're looking for a job, Power BI is the easy way to get a job, but then keep on upskilling yourself because Microsoft Fabric is going to change the world in a way. So it's always be good to be on top of the technology, I guess.
Absolutely.
Leon, what are your views?
Go and get that DP600. I mean, I can.
Get that DP600.
I agree with both of your points. Absolutely. Just to play devil's advocate again, I would probably suggest, rather than focusing solely on tools, focus on how you can drive business value with data, and also potentially now, depending on where you are in your career, with AI as well. Once you've kind of worked out a route there, the tools will naturally come from that perspective. So just to offer a different perspective from the Fabric Power BI aspect there. But yeah, you can't go wrong. As I mentioned, DP600 is the route forward, and both NJ and Pragati, I believe, have content available on that as well. Excellent. Okay, fantastic. So we're pretty much at time. So I really want to thank NJ for joining us today. It's been a really interesting session. Some workarounds that I think that some of us were aware of, and some that definitely the majority of us here were not aware of as well. So fantastic session. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are so many things I was like, okay, this can be done as well, and I literally didn't know about it. I think that's why NJ is great at doing these things in Power BI. I mean, definitely go and follow him, his videos. I think you have a YouTube channel, NJ, right? Oh yeah, like, so my YouTube channel is called Power BI Park, and you know, you can. So a lot of the different, you know, it's like reports that you saw me show, I have tutorials on how to make them. So you know, it's like, check it out if you want. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go to his videos, because he does amazing things with the visualization in Power BI. So definitely go check that out. Yes, and we did share the link to that in the chat right at the beginning of the session as well. So please make sure you do follow NJ and go and check out Power BI Park as well. NJ, thank you once again. We're going to go ahead and close the session now. So again, this has been Pragati's last session with us for a little while now. So we will look forward to welcoming you back, definitely, and you're more than welcome to join us whenever you have the opportunity as well, Pragati. We're going to miss you. Leon. I'll try to bring the baby on the call one day. Junior Jane can be hosting you also. Absolutely. Any Fabric tips that they have, please do let us know as well. Oh yeah, definitely. Excellent. Okay, and we'd like to thank all of the community for being here with us today. Like we've mentioned, it is now officially summer, so go out and enjoy it. We really appreciate you spending the time with us today, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us at the Microsoft Fabric UK User Group. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and see you all soon.